Welcome to Tech Film Noir, from cult classics to cinematic chaos. We ask what holds up and what falls apart when it comes to tech and our beloved sci-fi classics. Because when the movie guesses the future, we check their work. Tech Film Noir. Tech Film Noir. Tech Film Noir. Today joining us is myself. Hi, Lianne. And who else do I have with me?
And Jeff.
I do. I'm Simon Painter.
And we are your resident tech geeks, film buffs, and professional over-analyzers. And today we have got a cracker for you. The 1995 potential classic, we'll get into that. Strange Days, a dystopian sci-fi thriller. I mean, is there any other kind on this show? I'm not quite sure. It's an interesting one. So the story follows Lenny Nero, who is played by the wonderful Ralph Fiennes. We just had a discussion prior to this episode, so it's after Schindler's List, so quite a big deal at the time, so riding that high of his career. Ralph Fiennes plays a sleazy ex-cop who deals in illegal SQUID recordings, and we will go into what that means in a minute. It's basically virtual reality clips that lets people experience other people's memories and sensations. But it's not just that he's selling it, he uncovers a dark conspiracy involving the police, corruptions, racial tension, and social unrest. First, for our audience who might not have seen it, let's watch a trailer.
From the creator of T2 and Aliens.
This is life. It's a piece of somebody's life, straight from the cerebral cortex.
It's the end of the century, and the new addiction.
You ready?
Try me.
Is living other people's lives.
Hold on.
Or deaths. Strange Days is a sexy, kinetic thriller, one of the best films of the year. Strange Days, directed by Kathryn Bigelow, rated R. Tomorrow at theaters everywhere.
What did we think of this film? Has anyone seen it before? It's the first time I've seen it.
First time I've seen it.
Second time I've seen it. Now, I last saw it quite a long time ago. My vague memories were, wow, that was pretty good. Why did I not know this existed? And basically roughly the same reaction again. Like, this is really good, actually. I would say, if anything, this has gotten better with age. If for no other reason, that it feels a bit like the outside world is catching up with the world of... I mean, it's set in 1999, which I think is probably mostly for thematic reasons. But it does feel like we're heading into... This is brilliant. This is an absolutely brilliant film. And it's astonishing to me that hardly anyone has ever heard of it, outside of that one clip from the Fatboy Slim song, right here, right now.
This is your life, right here, right now. It's real time, you hear me?
So, piece of musical history.
And I listened to that track this morning, and it is quite clearly Angela Bassett. If you're listening for it, having recently seen the film, that's the spot. I mean, it's kind of a throwaway line in the film, but yeah, that's probably this film's claim to posterity, and yet it's legitimately really good. This does not deserve to be a slightly forgotten film. And we were discussing just before recording that a lot of these people were kind of on the upward curve in terms of their careers at this point. A lot of these people were fairly newly broken into the film business, but in a big way, and all of them practically have gone on to great things since this. So effectively now it's got a star-studded cast, and what a performance, especially from Ralph Fiennes and Angela Bassett, two absolute acting heavyweights. And Ralph Fiennes brings so much to his character. I adore his performance. Now, I think it would have been easy to make Lenny just an egotistical, smarmy pusher, which is kind of what he's written as. But with Ralph Fiennes, he gets all these extra levels of vulnerability and trauma and all sorts. It's an absolute tour de force of acting skill.
I must say, though, those curtain bangs are really doing all the heavy lifting there, though. Yeah, there's a lot of emotion coming from those heavy bangs. That's a very 90s haircut.
Everybody has a 90s haircut in this movie. It being the 90s.
But I was playing a game through the whole film of wig or hair. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that was not Ralph Fiennes' real hair.
But it turns out that half the people in the movie were wearing wigs.
Yes.
There's a little bit of kind of a plot device.
Yes, there is that. Do you want to go into that a little bit more? So let's talk about the tech that we see in this film.
Unfortunately, I think this film I was expecting thematically not a million miles away from another film we've reviewed called Brainstorm. Very similar in parts. And everybody in the film, basically, there's a device that can record and play back experiences, but not just experiences like sight and sound, but also touch as well. So it's pretty much like being there. Cue the Memorex advert, was it?
Well, my background, I thought it was also a bit like Johnny Mnemonic.
It has both of them in there.
So here's the whole way through, I was thinking, like, this needs to be a cinematic universe. The first part is Brainstorm, where they invent this technology. Then we move on to Strange Days, where it's become portable and ubiquitous. Then we'll move on to Johnny Mnemonic, where now there's a whole different way of using it, and now it's digital data. So I think these three films all belong to the same universe.
Yeah, I think they progress. So they're all wearing this movie a device called the SQUID, which is superconducting quantum interference device, which sounds like they just went, we want to call it something cool. We made it look a bit like you're putting a squid on your head. It's like kind of a bit of a splat that you put on your head underneath a wig or just on top of your head. And they went, we just need to come up with a cool, nonsensical set of tech words that will work in the movie. I'm not quite sure where the quantum bit comes in.
Because quantum always makes it sound plausible, no matter how preposterous.
And that still works with the tech bros nowadays. We just say, it's quantum AI, mate. And then you suddenly get like an extra £10 billion of seed funding. I enjoyed the film. I feel like it was an incredible 95-minute film. And unfortunately, it was a kind of a 135 or 145 minute film. It was a little bit too long. But I mean, there's the fact that it's also directed by Kathryn Bigelow, who by this point had already done Blue Steel and Point Break and a bunch of other stuff. This is not a rookie director. And script treatment by, idea and treatment by Jim Cameron, but she's probably most known for things like The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. Neither of which we've actually seen.
For me, it's absolutely all about Point Break, which obviously features, Hall of Famer almost, Keanu.
I would say Blue Steel is a little bit of another slightly undiscovered gem.
Steel's
It's
fantastic
a great,
as well.
It's a great film.
Fantastic.
I mean, I don't think I'd say Strange Days is a genuinely great film, but Blue Steel's one of those quirky, offbeat cult films that it's always a pleasure to find and discover. And I liked Blue Steel quite a lot, but this is, I really don't like. Apparently this film was criticized heavily back when it came out, and I don't see it. I know you commented on its running length. I actually thought this was fine. I was completely happy with the amount of story that we got in those 2.5 hours, which granted is pretty long, but it felt like there was a lot of story to go through.
And I think there actually you do point out that this is probably why it's criticized at times, because nobody was making 2.5 hour long movies in 1995 really. It's only really I think like kind of Lord of the Rings, so early 2000s when the long film came back into fashion, I think, roughly about then.
Yeah, I think Monty Python and The Life of Brian was heavily criticised when they first went through editing because it was too long, and that's why there was so much was cut out of that film similarly. But yeah, no, I mean, agreed. But there was a lot of character stuff in here, and I loved that about this too. The sort of the central, I'd say maybe partly almost bordering on a weakness of this film is this central conceit that he is asking a woman who loves him but he doesn't love back to help him save a woman he loves who doesn't love him back. And that is an interesting dynamic, although I would only say that, I mean, I do love both of these actors, Angela Bassett and Ralph Fiennes. I love them both, but I don't feel like they had a lot of chemistry.
No, it wasn't until they laid it on pretty thick that I even realised that Angela Bassett fancied Ralph Fiennes. At first I just thought she just tolerated him because he was a friend. I really felt nothing more than they were just friends.
I think they hinted at some kind of past romance early on, but it was so subtly hinted that it was only when it had kind of something happened later on. I was like, okay. Oh, maybe. Super hint.
It really only feels like this is only just a small little black mark against a film that is otherwise genuinely great. And also, why does this never get listed as cyberpunk? Because this is cyberpunk, and it never seems to pop on any of those lists of the great cyberpunk films. But as far as I'm concerned, there's probably others I haven't seen, but as far as I'm aware, there's 3 really great cyberpunk films, and that's Johnny Mnemonic and Blade Runner, possibly Terminator, the first one. And this, I'd say those are the great... I'm still waiting on a flipping Neil Stephenson adaptation, and I have never got one, so we have to make do.
So why do you think it isn't included then? Because, like you said, there are elements that other films have.
Yeah, I think a lot of films have probably lifted ideas from this one. I can think of quite a few that have borrowed this whole idea of this black market of stolen memories and all that. This isn't the only film that did it, but I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe it's the first. But I mean, it's cyberpunk for me at least, in the sense that, so in my mind, the classic cyberpunk storyline is advanced technology mixed with the very low level dregs of society. Effectively he's a pusher. He's he's a drug dealer, but he's not. Well, he's coded as a drug dealer, but it's not drugs he's selling. It's illicit stolen memories or something. But but that's like down, and we've got a lot of sort of grungy back alleys and seedy nightclubs. It's all down on the sort of seedy end of society, but with high tech. That is classic cyberpunk.
But what I actually thought was really interesting, though, is unfortunately for this podcast, gives us very little to kind of talk about in terms of the technologies. It actually was very sparse on technology. The only kind of major technology was the SQUID and some MiniDiscs. Nothing else in that world seemed like it seemed like very normal 1999 technology. Nothing seemed out the realms of kind of possibility, which was interesting that they had this technology to wear the SQUID, which is, as Jeff said, like almost kind of like squid-like. It was very jelly-like kind of thing that you wear on your head. But all the rest of the tech just was very normal. People were just still driving around. Nobody had any kind of weird interface system or anything like that. And
even the cell phones were like contemporary cell phones. I'm sure I saw like a Nokia 3310 in there.
I think it was an Ericsson. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It had the delicious antennae, which I used to love from the Ericsson phones, where you could just chew on the antennae.
Well, I mean, of course, this was made in 1994, released in 1995, but set in 1999. So I think that it was a deliberate choice that they wanted to make this world seem like this is just about to happen. We've got the classic cyberpunk. There's random flames in the streets for some reason, because there's always flames in the street for some reason.
What I find interesting is you see flashbacks in this movie, I assume is like around what was then present day, 1994, 95, and everything seems really nice. The flashbacks are all now. Is this effectively kind of if this accurately records past experiences, then it can't just be, or doesn't make sense for it to be like rose-tinted glasses, remembering a better past. Was this genuinely a better past? Because all of the flashbacks are all really nice, but then you look at the current day and it's like absolutely terrible.
Almost in a way that feels like the real world's catching up with what this film is presenting, because there's a lot of stuff in this that sounds worryingly like the sort of things that we're hearing going on in the news right now.
Right here, right now!
In America, amongst possibly other parts of the world. Also, another little detail I adored. So whenever we see a SQUID flashback, two things. First off, there's that weird little sort of, this could be sort of analog blurriness at the beginning, but then when it's a flashback through the SQUID, it's full on like high def, whatever. And also those scenes are spectacularly well filmed. Those POV shots, that can't have been easy.
Yes.
But the other thing is, when you see an actual flashback, it's deliberately got tons of drop frames. It looks jerky and unnatural because that's remembered and not literally redisplayed in front of us, and that's a beautiful touch.
Yeah, I feel like that in that way it shares a little bit with its kind of sibling Brainstorm, because that went into a completely different aspect. I mean, that was taking it to the extreme, like a different aspect ratio, different film stock, like completely different.
Well, let's talk about the treatment of VR then in this film. So have we explained it well enough for the audience? So the way it's used is you have to physically wear a device on your head to record those memories. And I think you wear a little belt thing as well.
It's a MiniDisc player.
It basically is a MiniDisc player. I don't think that's what they would call it in the thing, but yeah. So they can actually record it onto the MiniDisc. But you have to physically be there. And the way, it starts from not looking very sexy is, this film, as we touched upon earlier, is absolutely full of wigs. Everyone's just walking around wearing wigs so that you can't see it. Now, in the film, they suggest that the technology came from the CIA. So people were using it as wiretapping tools. Gone underground now, and people are using it just to record memories. So the first one we see in the film is someone taking part in a heist. So breaking and entering into a shop, getting caught by the police and things like that. So people pay money to watch these experiences, but they don't just watch them, they physically experience them as well. And to watch them, you also have to put that helmet on as well. So there's just lots of bad hat hair going on, I think, in this film.
Okay, first off, I don't think there's a single chance that a technology like this could work the way it is, but memory doesn't really work. I mean, I'm happy to put this aside because the film is so good, but memory doesn't work like this. Memory isn't like a video recorder. There's not like a long stream of videotape in our heads with all our memories on in sequential order. Our memory is based on context. And there's a whole like weird context tree in our heads, in effect, where it's one thing links to another through memories. And if it were ever possible to try doing something like this, you'd find that the memory you watched is all distorted because your memories aren't all set up the same as the person you took it from, so you'd see strange artifacts all over the place. But fine, okay, let's park that for a moment, because I don't care. That's a conceit, and it's fine. But 100%, if this ever really happened, yeah, this exact scenario, I could believe this. This whole underground dealing in some really quite extreme memories in some cases, and yes, I could believe that people would pay big money. Like there's businessmen who have relatively sedate, tame lives, and they're paying big money to like feel like they're going and doing this heist and being all full of adrenaline and the risk of life and death, but sitting perfectly safely in their armchair and knowing that they are beyond any harm. Yeah, I can
And
believe
obviously, boobs as well,
that.
of course.
Yes, yeah, because the porn industry does always drive technology forward. That's the thing.
That they were the first users, I believe, of multi-branching technology. We're talking about who's using multi-branching technology on DVDs. The unfortunate realization was the only people using it were in the adult entertainment business.
Yeah, I can, and once again, I am 100% able to believe that. And so the other thing, of course, is our killer uses it as part of his, or their, I don't know how spoilerific we're going, kill. Of course, he violates the people he kills, and he puts the device on their head so that they witness his experience of violating and killing them. And that is beyond sick, but that's the point. You're meant to find that appalling. Like, he finds experiences this, and it almost makes him literally sick as he's watching it.
It does make him sick afterwards, doesn't it? I think he pukes.
Roger Ebert, when he reviewed it, he said it was one of the most sort of twisted things he'd ever seen on cinema. So
I wonder if that contributed to some of the popularity of the movie, because I think it probably narrowed the audience that would be able to see it in the US, and maybe soured some of the reviews because it's quite strong for its era, I think, that kind of theme.
Yeah, I'd say it's justified in the plot, because part of the point is that you know that the person that they were chasing is a sick monster, and that helps, if nothing else, hide some of the twist that's coming up later.
It doesn't particularly linger, and it is relatively brief.
And in an awful way, a very creative plot device.
Incredibly creative, yeah.
Yeah, you actually see very little in terms of, most of it is implication and seeing Ralph Fiennes react extreme to the awful things he's witnessing. And yeah, no, I think it's justified in the context of the film. And again, knowing how horrible some human beings could be, I can once again fully imagine that would be something that some people's minds would go to. And that there are videos I'm aware of shared online of some fairly horrible things. And there are people who trade in these videos, even if it's not for gratification, just, I don't know, some sort of perverse pleasure of knowing that you own this awful stuff. So yeah, I can, from a sociological perspective, I'm 100% in agreement with the film that this sort of thing would happen.
Oh yeah, when you get to the point where you can record somebody's experience as it happens, and it'd be that good or bad, of course, whenever there's something where there's something kind of taboo or extreme, there will be a black mark in it. It's just inevitable human nature. And it does speak a lot to human nature, this movie, I think.
I'm actually curious as to why it's illegal. I mean, it's a plot point that it's illegal. This is part of why Ralph Fiennes is on the fringes of society, because he deals in illegal goods. But why is it illegal?
I think because it encourages people to do bad things. I think it's because there's a black market where people are like, I'm going to go and rob a liquor store. Because I can record it, or I'm going to stab someone because there's good money in that. And I imagine the more extreme the content, the more money you get for doing it. So I think that's probably why.
Because otherwise, like, let's take the porn scenario. Like, there's nothing illegal about that. And if everyone's a consenting adult and everyone's been paid a reasonable amount of money for their time and their work, then I don't see how there'd be a problem with releasing that. You'd probably have to edit it slightly, and you'd probably have to be an awful lot more careful about what sort of a studio you use, because it's going to be pretty obvious when you're actually POV. But yeah, but yes, it could well be. It could well be because of that. Although I'd argue that TikTok has kind of encouraged all sorts of strange behaviour with some of the trends that float around on that platform.
But in a nice way, it could be a good leveler, though. So you could experience how other people experience other things in a positive way, like walking a mile in their shoes and things like that.
Literally, the guy with no legs, that's literally what he does during his experience.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So there's some potential positives.
An idea that's floated briefly is the idea that maybe a trans person could experience being a woman legitimately. And I could imagine a whole load of people in that community would be well keen on that sort of a thing. And there's nothing improper about that as long as everyone is informed, etc.
think the other thing that's kind of implied as well is that it's highly addictive. Going to the illusion of drugs, I think that might be also the reason why it's illegal, is because it's jacking in.
Is he dead?
No, but his frontal lobes are like two runny eggs. They put an amplifier in line to boost the signal, and it fries his brain.
I think they called it.
Yeah,
which is
it's got some lingo from in there.
Feels like that it's an addictive thing that people would just do on loop rather than living, and I suspect that's maybe one of the other reasons why.
It could be, although I'd suspect it's probably not an addictive property of the machine itself so much as
psychological addiction.
How it affects the person in question. It probably wouldn't get everyone that way, but I can imagine some people getting. It's implied that this is happening to Ray Fiennes, that he's just falling back again and again on these happy memories of a time he remembers being good and sort of losing track of what's around him. That's one of the themes of the film.
And they say there's nothing more dangerous than nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, he's told at one point that this is his real life, right here, right now.
This is your life, right here, right now.
Keep sliding those in, I love it. So yeah, it's an interesting use of VR. MiniDiscs. Who had a MiniDisc player?
No, I didn't have one.
Me neither, but also they were considered to be a huge failure, I think, in America. And I think that in the UK and especially in Japan, they were, I think, might have been more prevalent. This is one of those things that Techmoan did a video on. And they're considered, in some countries, they're considered highly niche. So I imagine, like maybe an American film, they can get away with just almost unmodifying using it because almost nobody would have seen one.
It could be. I remember them being around a bit, but honestly, I went from cassette to CD. That was my upgrade path. And once we got CD, that was it. We're happy with CD. But yeah, it might, as you say, be a case of that. I mean, like I remember an old Doctor Who story from the 70s that had a monster covered in bubble wrap, which looks hilarious by modern standards. But at the time, bubble wrap wasn't well known and would have just looked unusual.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a MiniDisc player for a little bit.
Did you?
Yeah. Only for very, very briefly because they just broke. They just didn't last very long.
Right.
They weren't as good as CD players as well. Not the actual MiniDiscs themselves, but like the device that you would play it on.
Right. Oh, yes. Techmoan has got a load of like used MiniDiscs from Japan, and half of them will not read discs. It's not the disc's fault. It's the players have got are a little bit cheeky. The other bit of tech I did spot in this movie is the guy who's like the kind of reproducer. You know, he's like effectively like a pirate, experienced tape pirate. His background of his van, like what's in there? It's an audio mixer. It's like an audio mixer just mounted vertically. It's quite distinctly, I couldn't tell which brand of audio mixer it was, but whatever he's got stuck on his wall, it's not like some magic computer. It's just an audio mixer.
This would be like old 50s films when they just stuck a whole load of big computers behind our scientists to look legitimate.
Hey, the props department are just doing the best they can, you know?
Still do it. They still do it now. There was a recent series, I can't remember which one it was, but it was a massive one. And in the background was just a bunch of some of the latest Roland rack synths that it was meant to be as part of a supercomputer or something. It's like, no, that's just a Roland rack synth.
Do you say Roland Rat?
Rack as in rack mount synthesizer.
Right, okay, right.
Now,
as well.
a Roland rat synth would be awesome if it was just like a soundboard.
I think that ship sailed now. I don't think there'll be much of a market for it.
This is too much of a deep cut reference. Nobody listening to this will remember Roland Rat, I imagine.
But anyway.
And welcome to the 80s Has-Beens podcast. Joined with us today. One thing I did want to ask, and it is technology related, because I think, there's not much really to go into apart from the VR stuff. It's a couple of days before the Millennium. And of course, if you cast your mind back, we were all in a bit of a tiz. And why we were all in a bit of a tiz? Because the Millennium bug threatened to absolutely destroy all our IT infrastructure.
Fearful of the chaos the Millennium might bring, this family has left home in the south of England for a remote farmhouse in Scotland.
So, what are your memories of the new Millennium?
To be honest, I wasn't very old at the time.
So will you make me and Jeff feel old?
Possibly. I mean, I was 18 years old when the Millennium came round. So, I was barely old enough to buy alcohol. So, honestly, not a lot.
Did you not have a PC? Were you not worried that did you not go run downstairs and turn it on?
I remember, so I live near a town called Shrewsbury, and I remember going to the street there one day, and there was a street seller selling little Millennium bug toys for kids, and I remember that happening. That is my That's actually my strongest memory of the whole Millennium bug craze, which of course turned out to be not a thing. Or rather, from what I understand, it was basically a problem that was solved so effectively that no one ever saw it.
I was worried about it because I absolutely love my PC, which was housed in the living room of my parents' house. And, it was my pride and joy. And I'd bought the PC magazines, which all came with discs that promised if you put this disc in, it will fix any Millennium bug problem. And I was really keen to make sure that didn't happen because I had a really good game of The Sims going on. I could not afford to lose that. So literally, the day after, so the new year, 2000, running downstairs, pressing that big old button on the tower PC, waiting for the hum. It was such a relief. And then all the news stories came out. It wasn't really a thing. But Jeff, your story is a lot more interesting.
Well,
you were part of the firefight, weren't you?
Yeah, it was barely more interesting, I think. So yes, I was at the time working in a consultancy with financial services clients, working in things like interbanking, banking interchange. When people make transfers, it was at this point. Remember, we were very early into the web, so there's not really. I wasn't really doing anything like web-based stuff. It's more back-end stuff. Which when you're moving financial transactions about between countries, you kind of want that to work. So I was actually paid to remain sober over the Millennium. This is the most interesting part of the story. Is I was paid actually quite good money to remain sober for that night, just for that one night. Just in case there were any.
Well, what would you have done? What's the just in case scenario?
I was basically on call for this particular piece of banking software because I would have had to dash into work because I had no laptop at this point. It was 1999. I could dash into work and see what I could done to unstick the transactions. They did at some point get a transaction stuck, and it was like 60 million South African rand, and we managed to figure out the bug. It was just in the middle of booking a flight over to South Africa. It wasn't during the Millennium bug. It was the same system, just during another time. But we had plenty of other systems, and we had no reported problems of the Millennium bug.
Should have just bought one of those discs like I got from the magazines, that was stuck on the front. They promised that they was going to fix it, so they just got that. That would have been so much cheaper. I guess for anyone that is quite young and doesn't remember, what was the reason why we were all panicking about the Millennium bug?
Well, all of the dates in old systems were encoded usually into 2 digits, because if you wrote a system in 1970, you probably didn't fathom that they would still be used when 99 came around, and then that rolled over to 00 if you'd only encoded like a 2-digit year. This is actually not the last time I've heard of this. I think there was the end of the Unix Epoch as well was another one that was going to potentially cause a problem. Basically, people encoding something that could be quite a bit of information to too small amount of information just to save on a few bytes.
Yeah, so there you go. We all thought it was just going to roll over to 00, and that was it. It was just going to wipe
planes
out.
would just drop out the sky.
No, seriously. The people were just panicking about it. The news stories were escalating for months prior.
And as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's a universal solution for the Linux Epoch problem yet. That is going to pop up in 2038. So in another edition of this podcast, we're suddenly going to go off the air because the Linux Epoch has finally ended. But that doesn't sound quite so sexy as it's the year 2000. That's straightforward and everyone can understand that. And the newspapers can scare us about that. But the 2038 problem for the Linux Epoch, much harder to explain to anyone.
Prince never did a song about it, that's why.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Or Pulp.
I mean, Prince did talk about the Millennium bug. Think about it. Oops, out of time. He knew the score. People listened to Prince sooner. We don't have all this fanning around when it got to fixing it later on.
That's just my recommendation for life. Everyone listens to Prince a little bit sooner than they normally would. Yeah.
Oh, and also, can we make a comment on the soundtrack to this film, because it's a good soundtrack. It is legitimate, great soundtrack.
It's got Juliette Lewis actually singing PJ Harvey, covering PJ Harvey songs and singing them herself, which is very nice.
I can hardly wait.
And she did a good job of singing them herself. You got Skunk and Anansie,
who actually are in the film.
Yes, yeah. The other thing I think that dates it a little bit, some of the kind of metal in scenes, which I find dates a film a little bit, but the rest of the soundtrack pretty banging.
Yeah, And one of my all-time favourites, Peter Gabriel, of course, takes us out in the over the credits at the end. As is often the place, you'll find him in an awful lot of films from the 90s and early 2000s. I'm looking at you, Wall-E, and various others, but it's a great soundtrack, and that's probably something I might go and have a listen to at some point. It is very 90s-tastic. I mean, I know this is set just a few years in the future, which is still the 90s for most of the film up until the last couple of minutes of it. So, and it is very aggressively 90s. Can I also have a shout out for Juliette Lewis's as Faith, her costume and her sort of rock star persona? I absolutely loved it, and that is the 90s tack-stickest lipstick I've ever seen. Loved it.
She looks brilliant. I absolutely coveted every single thing she wore in that film.
An awful lot of wild hair colours and everyone, which again is sort of, this is so Johnny Mnemonic a few years before Johnny Mnemonic was a thing. That's sort of that exact view of what cyberpunk looks like. This film was already doing it.
Yeah, really interesting one. So I guess that brings us towards the end of the show. So what did you think was good about the tech in this film?
I think some of the tech in this film is actually also the stuff that's behind the camera, literally, is actually how they invented new camera tech to actually film some of the swing round POV shots, which are very technically complex. I'd say I quite liked the restrained use of tech without making it look too anachronistic. There was little bits of hints of, I think most good cyberpunk feels slightly anachronistic. So there's a mixture of floppy disks and monitors. I don't know, kind of futuristic tech piece, and then contemporary mobile phones and cars and stuff. So it doesn't feel as kind of weird. The gap of the anachronism isn't as wide as, say, like Blade Runner, where you've got sky holograms and then green screen CRTs. Like the gap of the anachronisms isn't as wide as something like Blade Runner, and maybe not quite as, if this is the closest, because it is close. The gap between now and when it's meant to be is closer than Johnny Mnemonic and Blade Runner.
Yes, it feels like that now, doesn't it? I mean, we can imagine technology today. If you put that if we watch a science fiction movie, we'd say the same thing, because we'd be like, oh, we've got AI, we've got VR, we've got this and we've got that. The capabilities on our phones and things like that. But also at the same time, because we're walking around so used to it and it doesn't feel new and shiny, there's just something about that. I think there's a lot to be said about the way characters interact with technology in a film, and that can make or break a film. If the characters are constantly walking around in wonder, I think because we're supposed to, as an audience, feel wonder at it, I think that can age a film dramatically. But if people are just walking around because this is just normal, like we do every day with our technology, then I think that helps it keep kind of in a time capsule. I don't know, it's just a theory.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in fact, if you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, you'll see that very deliberately the director got everyone, whenever they're seeing a bit of what would be to a 1960s audience miraculous modern tech, to often just sort of look bored at it or to look disinterested because it's ordinary and everyday. There's like an auto check that Dr. Floyd goes through at one point where it's like doing basically like a retinal scan or something on him, and he's just looking at his watch and waiting for this to all be over. So I'd agree, this goes for that same approach.
On Truth Social, Donald Trump put a deep fake of himself talking about AI medical pods.
President Donald J. Trump has announced a historic new healthcare system, the launch of America's first medbed hospitals and a national medbed card for every citizen.
Every American will soon receive their own medbed card. These facilities are safe, modern, and designed to restore every citizen to full health and strength. This is the beginning of a new era in American healthcare.
That sounds very Theranos.
Yeah. I mean, he, of course, has a great track record of telling nothing but the truth, does old Mr. Trump. So I'm sure that he can't possibly be wildly exaggerating / just saying something he saw in a film the other day or whatever it is. By the way, in terms of future predictions, can I just also point out to one little detail that I adored? There's a bit where Ray Fiennes is watching a news report and they're talking about what do the psychics say about the future, and at one point they say in the year 2025, which incidentally is the current year, so they've done this episode in the exact right moment, we will be on our second female president, and I am sorry to say that prediction did not come true.
And also Colonel Gaddafi was not given the Nobel Peace Prize. He was given a bullet.
That was an interesting line to throw in there. But, Trump looks like he's gunning for one, so who knows? Maybe we do in 2025 give dictators Nobel Peace Prizes. We'll see.
Sorry to interrupt, but as you can tell, we recorded this episode in 2025.
And since then, Donald Trump did actually get a Peace Prize. Maybe not the Nobel one, but the people at FIFA gave him their version. Strange days indeed.
Possibly. I mean, there is the whole thing about the sort of this wild police force that are out of control and running riot like the army through the streets. And there are literal reports on a regular basis of this exact thing occurring in America right now.
And you can really feel as well that this movie is very much reflecting the narratives of the LA riots as well, directly inspired by it, I believe, as well. So you can sort of feel that tension in the film.
I might be wrong, but I suspect part of the reason it's set in the Millennium is obviously partly because it's interesting, and another because it's not far off and it dates the film in a particular, which was at the time 6 years away from the time of filming. But also I wonder if it's because it means that it ends on a moment of renewal, because the film goes away with an implication that something monumental has happened and the future now might go on a different track, perhaps. But the Millennium has kind of become a moment of everything has become new again and everyone's got a second chance. And I suspect thematically that's why we've gone with the Millennium.
Aye, very much so. What did we not find so keen about the tech in the film?
I mean, like I said earlier, I don't think this sort of technology is actually possible, just because it's...
No, we're not with that battery life. It's tiny, that device.
Yes. Okay, doubly so. But the idea of literally stitching someone else's memories inside yours, it doesn't really work. I am 100% happy to accept that because it makes for a great story, but I don't think that's ever going to be possible. I just don't think our brains work that way. We're not computers. We're made of fleshy bits of meat. And each of our fleshy bits of meat works differently and is wired differently to everyone else's. But it's fine. I don't mind that.
What would you want to steal from the thing? What would you want to experience? I would totally turn into a bloke. Like, I would love to see that, just for, even if the tapes are like for just like a couple of minutes. I don't think they're very long, are they? Because MiniDiscs are known for storage capacity. But yeah, I'd be totally doing the Kate Bush song.
Yes, absolutely. I'd say for all
Which
I care,
might be
it
a good thing. That might be a
so.
good thing. If we all experience what it's like to be the other sex, maybe, this gender imbalance wouldn't happen.
Absolutely.
Or people were probably just look in front of mirrors and break themselves to death.
During the movie, where there's the businessman who's and he says you could do this, you could do that, you could become a woman, and we both said.
He does, doesn't he? I forgot about. Yeah, he becomes in a shower.
Yeah, people be like, the experience of woman. You put it in, and it's a meeting, and it's like, you just stole my idea.
Oh yeah. I want to experience what it's like to be a woman. Like, I've been talked over in meetings. Yeah, enjoy.
We never actually find out what it is he really wanted. Although it did feel a bit like Lenny is slowly, because Lenny's a people person. He knows people, and he seems to be slowly zooming in and watching the guy react and working. So we leave on like the I want to be a woman implication. So it's almost like maybe that's what he's after. I don't know. Because, of course, there's a silly gag and that scene ends and we never find out.
Soapy boobs. That's what he wanted to experience, I think. Soapy boobs.
It could easily be.
I'd love to see someone want to really experience something really boring as well. That'd be really interesting. It's like a really fetishy market for really boring activities.
I don't want anything weird and fetishy. I just go for something every day. But I bet you this film is probably incredibly naive if it thinks that this is the depth of depravity that this technology would be used.
Yes.
I mean, we've all heard rumours off the internet, even those of us that don't go chasing this, and I do not, but there is some really weird stuff out there.
I think there's just a limit to what in decent, polite society, even with a rated R movie, that they could talk about and even hint at in 1994.
On a lighter note, do you think if you put it on a dog's head, that you'd be able to be a dog for a while? I think that'd be really nice. Can you imagine? That'd be so relaxing. Like, you just get a dog to go to the park and stuff and just experience that joy of going to the park.
I'm just eating this floor sausage. I'm so happy.
Yeah, exactly. How lovely would that be? Like, I've had a really hard day at work. You put it on, and it's like, dog's life.
I'm almost certain that I could probably name at least one community out there on the internet that would be well into that.
Again, someone would go around and then, yeah. So, would you recommend this film? I think I know the answer here.
Yeah, categorically yes. This film is excellent and underrated, and well worth your time.
And hard to find. I'm just going to warn you, dear listeners.
I recommend it. I'll just say though, is make sure you leave it. Make sure you're aware that it is a 2.5 hour movie, and either schedule in splitting it up, or make sure you've got enough time to watch it, because it is not the shortest of movies that we'll be reviewing. In fact, I think it might be the longest movie we've reviewed so far.
Some films just felt longer.
Believe it or not, it took me such a long time to get through Weird Science. Whereas this went down nice and easy, and I was quite... Although I did watch this over 2 nights because it's very long, but I had no issue just watching this, because it was... it's surprisingly character-led, which I love about it.
Absolutely. Well, I guess talking about things that go down nice and easy, as is custom on this show, we'd like to give you recommendations, dear listeners, of what to pair with this movie. So, pairing notes, please.
For me, it'd be a nice glass of cold Penguin vodka, as shown in the movie, and maybe some calamari to reference the squid.
Nice. I like that. I went with, since there's a New Year's party involved, I think a glass of champagne, nice and chilled, and some sort of posh canapé. But I'm not a very posh person, so I'm not quite sure what a posh canapé actually looks like. But that's what I'm imagining in my head.
In the 90s, I imagine it's vol-au-vents.
Yes, vol-au-vents. Yes, champagne and vol-au-vents. That's what we're having.
Delicious. And if you want to take my recommendation, I'm going to go 90s too. I would recommend having a nice cold bottle of hooch, for those of you that remember that alcohol pop, which was very popular back in the day, with a nice bag of Monster Munch, because I think the squid kind of looks a bit like Monster Munchy kind of things as well. And I just imagine that Monster Munches are going to endure the future, because they're brilliant.
It will be the only thing that's left, along with the cockroaches.
What a lovely pairing with that film. Well, thank you, dear listeners, for joining us today as we take a trip down strange days, and strange it was. Highly recommended, but just be careful. If someone is wearing a wig, they might be recording you. Goodbye, all.
Julian, I'll be back. Only in a rerun.